we're gonna do in English, right?
We're gonna do it in English, yeah. And I mean, I tell you all the time, and such a good job you're doing so far. I mean, it's the first year you haven't really had a chance to finish your year in a regular season. That's why I'm here in Orlando. What is the experience so far? What did you think coming in, and where you are right now? How do you enjoy the job? Or, you know, I want you to explain a little bit from, like, you had a vision coming in, there was a dream that you told me, now you're here.
Man, I mean, it's awesome. It's awesome all around because it wasn't something that happened quickly, right? Like, I've been a strength coach now for 12 years, and it took that long because I had the idea to work in the NBA. I didn't know I was going to be a strength coach, but I had the idea that I wanted to work in the NBA at some point. And for the people watching, like, I was born and raised in Brazil, and I had the dream to one day work in the league. And when I left Brazil to pursue a degree internationally, that was kind of like, man, it would be cool maybe one day work with sports, high level, high performance. And then the NBA, because I played basketball growing up, was kind of like, I always kind of thought about it. And then it was funny because as a strength coach early on, I was like, I want to get to the NBA. And then that kind of faded a little bit because I got caught up doing the jobs I was doing then, you know, the schools I work with, the other programs I work with. But in the back of my mind, I always had this idea like, okay, hopefully, eventually, at some point, I can get to the NBA. And then finally, a little less than a year ago, it finally came to fruition, which joining to work with you and the organization. So it was kind of like, it was truly like a dream come true from looking back, you know, the whole idea that I had. And then to seg into that, it was the expectation. I did so much research and I talked to so many NBA strength coaches prior to getting this job that I thought I had a pretty good idea, but then it was funny because once you start, it's still, I knew what I was expecting and what was going to happen, but at the same time, it was completely different in its own beast per se. And it was just, yeah, there were days that I knew exactly what to expect, but there were days that was a completely different beast and something I'm like, oh, this is totally different from anything I ever work with, right? So, I mean, it's just, one day I'm thrown in a loop, the other day I'm like, okay, I'm really good at this, I'm fine, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Would you say that everything goes back to basketball? You know, NBA is the highest level of basketball. But you worked with basketball before. You come from a basketball program. That was one of the main reasons that we interviewed you. We wanted to implement what you know with basketball, even though it was college and was women's basketball. It's still basketball. You know what I mean? Like, so seeing basketball, NBA level to where you worked, do you think that for strength and conditioning, at the end of the day, it's just basketball?
Yeah.
You know, if that's just like, it's just a term, like a short term.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because the sport is the same, right? And then you can even say the athlete is the same because it's a basketball player, regardless if it's a professional or a college, if it's a male player or a female player, right? So it's interesting because yet at the same time, they're so different, but yet so the same, right? And I'll tell this story like often when people are like, you know, oh, eating habits of college players weren't the best. And then like you constantly kind of fighting this, right? And then there's this one time in a previous program I work with, you know, I had a player walk in with a fast food bag, and that was her lunch. And I'm like, wow, like couldn't choose something better to do, right? Or to eat. And then it's a work in progress. And then it's funny because fast forward to working in the NBA, you know, like a week into the new job, I'm walking through the hallway and I see a player coming in to work, right? And what does he have in his hand? a fast food bag, right? So it's like, I mean, optimal, maybe not. But the question here is like, are they really that different? Yet, are they really the same? You know? So as a coach, it's like, what have I learned from my previous situation? How was I able to help that player about nutrition choices? And how can you take something out of that past situation and apply on your current situation? Like, to me, that's kind of like how I like to navigate waters. Like, especially like when you said, okay, it's basketball, right? Yeah, it was basketball in college, now it's basketball in the pros, but like I learned so much in college. And I think the reason I'm able to offer stuff for this job is because of everything I learned there. And like, I'm still learning, but like you getting something out of the situation.
Yeah,
You know, both ways around.
And I think that one thing that you're good at is dealing with people, you know, dealing with athletes, dealing with players. And that's where I started. I started as a personal trainer when I wasn't a strength coach. I started dealing with the, you know, general population that I want to lose weight, I want to get stronger. The guy that wants to, you know, dunk a basketball because I was a basketball player. I mean, there's so many cases that helped me then, what 5, 6, 7 years ago, because I still work as a personal trainer then and work in the NBA to deal with players now. It's very, very interesting. But you know, besides the strength and conditioning, would you say that one of the big part of this job is dealing with people or athletes? Like, how would you describe that part of the job?
No, you killed it on your question. It's like, at the end of the day, it's about people. Like, people first. Like, sometimes people get so caught up on what program, what sets and reps, what nutrition, what supplements, what equipment, you know? But really, it's like, how's that person doing? You know, how's that player coping with whatever is going on? You know, we talk about pandemic and how is that person dealing with? Are they under stress from outside things? So is it really your job to stress them even more in the weight room? Like, so I feel like at the end of the day, we're humans first. You, me, the players. Everybody's humans. You know, there's someone's son or daughter, you know, and you just got to treat them as people. And that's when, like, we already talked about this before, but, you know, how important respect is in treating everybody equally and all this stuff is not because you're a superstar that I'm going to treat you differently. You know, like, at the end of the day, like, you're a person. Yeah. And just like anybody else. Yeah. And so there's a quote that my mentor taught me, and he says, it's not as much about X's and O's as it is about the Jimmys and the Joes. You know, so in translation, like, I feel like you really got to know your players more on a personal level, so then you can coach them the best way that they want to be coached.
Yeah. That's very interesting to say that, because another thing that people ask me all the time, how's the NBA? I want to get there. How'd you get there? And I mean, kind of changing the subject, but like in the subject, it's like I just saw a quote by Fergus Connolly that says, "You are not your job." You know, so like people think that like they're like irreplaceable because they're so smart and they know so much about strength and conditioning, and they forget the side of the personal level, how to make connections, how to make a player to work out, not an athlete, you know. I mean, it's 6 months for in the NBA, right? A season is 6 months. How to get those players to focus for 6 months, you know. But then how to get, after 6 months, how to get back next season even better how you are now. So it's like a 12-year, or it's like, you know, for some players, 5, 10 years project, you know. So it's like dealing with people is so important, because if they don't trust you, I mean, you have 5, 10 years to deal with that person, like it or not. You have to do different ways. Every single year is different, if that makes sense. You know, so that's why I wanted to talk about. That's why I ask you about how to deal with about dispute, like about the personal side and with the players.
But you know, it's funny, and I'm gonna make a hook here to work in college women's basketball, and it was exactly what you just described. That it was a process, like a person that I had as a freshman, you know. The relationship built, it took 3.5 years. You know, by the time I was leaving that job, I felt like the relationship was at its best, where they were like bought into the program. They saw the change they made, you know, on their bodies. Their performance on the court was better, like less injuries. And it's exactly what you said. It wasn't something overnight. And it's also not something that happens quickly, because people don't trust people quickly, especially if they're expecting you to bring change on their game, right? Yeah. So it's like, it is a process. It's 4 years, man, you know, in college at least. And here, like, we're talking about at least a year, right? Like 10, 12 months, that's one season. Yeah. Like, then you look at it really like from being drafted rookie all the way through like expecting to be a starter or like high minute player, it's like 4 or 5 years. Yeah. Yep. You know, and it's like you said, it's like, how can you help that player stay the course? Because it's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's funny that I learn a lot from people that I train how to do with players. I also learn a lot from my kids. You know, I have a 5-year-old and I have 2 other kids, but it's like players are getting younger. Not that they're 5-year-old, right? Yeah. But like they're 19, they're 20. Like our youngest player now is like 20 years old, just turned 20 years old. And it's not like dealing with children, but it's like requires a lot of attention, different things. Does that make sense? Like with
Absolutely.
my kids, like it requires like you have to be like alert to everything. Yeah. And with the NBA players, you in a different level, different age, of course, but like you have to be alert to everything. Like, are you eating? Are you sleeping? You know, are you not playing
so
video
much.
games on your phone? Are you doing this? Like, you have to perform. You have to do things well to perform well. You know, with the kids, it's like you have to behave. You have to do all those things to do things that you like. I learn a lot with my kids, but that's an experience that, you know, that I have in my mind.
I call that parallel learning. And a good buddy of mine, actually, we talked about this all the time, and it was like, you know, parallel learning is everywhere. And it's like observing like your kids and how you interact with them. How can that make you more effective as a strength coach? Yeah. You know, and I think you hit it on the head. It's awesome because it's exactly right. Like you can keep a 5-year-old entertained, you know, 1 hour at a time, and you can keep them to stay the course. I mean, if you do that successfully, I don't have kids, but I know you're a hell of a dad. So it's kind of like that's awesome, you know, because that can be honestly translate into how to keep guys motivated to stay the course, you know, how to chip in every day on their craft and deliberately practice, you know, why they're here for. So.
And I mean, you know, coming from Brazil, which I also came from Brazil, I know that experience is, I mean, I'm so grateful, and every day I wake up, you know, this is a dream job for me, and here I am. But how was the first, because I remember for me, and I told you this before, when we play, not scrimmage game, we play scrimmage games, and we play preseason games, and I told you, you're pretty excited. Yeah. And I was like, this is cool. And I know where you're coming from because I was there. Yeah. But as soon as the season starts,
it's a grind.
It's even cooler. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the games are even cooler. Like, and you're like, oh man, it cannot get any cooler than this. Yeah. You know, and like, you walk in to a game with, you know, like thousands of fans, and you walk into the Madison Square Garden, for example. You know, I mean, how was it? Your first experience? How was, like, you know, you're watching TV, now you're there. You're like, now you're in the middle of the court.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. And everything you said happened, like step by step, you know. Like, I'm excited, and then something happens, and I'm like even more excited, you know. And which I didn't think I could get any more excited about stuff. But then at the same time, it's like all that noise, right? Like a loud game. Like, I get caught in the moment, like running whatever I gotta run and then do whatever I need to do. And then, like, once it's over, and usually when I walk home, it's kind of like, that's when it usually hits me. It's like when I'm quiet and I'm like, did that really just happen? Like, you know, we're in a plane flying back from the Madison Square Garden, and, you know, there's lights are off, and then you're just in your own head. And I'm like, we just played at Madison Square Garden. Like, I remember as a tourist, like, I took my dad to a game at the Madison Square Garden, like me and him as a tourist, like watching the Knicks play. So yeah, it's like, it kind of like, it really like made me joyful inside. I'm like, wow, this is so cool, you know? But then again, like, I go home after a long road trip, and I'm like, whew, this is really happening, you know? Like, and then there's this one time we're all eating a meal as a team, and it was very interesting because there was a TV on, and then they showed our highlights.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the gentleman that had a highlight on TV was eating right beside me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
You know, and they're talking about, like, oh, look at my play or whatever. And I'm like, I'm really in here, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, it was like awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. And as a strength coach in the NBA and assistant strength coach, or your position, where you come in super excited, you know, a lot of people think that's, like, we talk about all the time. That's why I'm asking you. It's about sets and reps. You know, it's about, like, we talk about the personal side.
Yeah.
But how much do you do outside of strength and conditioning to finally do your job for, you know, I mean, if we work
Hour
for
and a half, 2 hours a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we work for 11 hours. Strength conditioning is probably like 2 hours.
Yeah.
How much do you do?
Man, we probably need, like, a whole conversation just about that.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
You know? But it's crazy, man. Like, you know, I hear a lot about coaches, and I'm speaking this from a place where I've lived a lot of other jobs too, right? And people complain about they're unhappy with their situation because they're in the weight room all day, but they're only really coaching for 2 hours, right? Which, by all means, that happens to us, right? We're there, like, from start to finish, you know, we're helping with whatever we can help, and then we also doing the strength and conditioning part, which, like you mentioned, is some days it's like 30 minutes, you know, some days it's 2 hours, depending on how many guys we're lifting that day. But at the end of the day, I feel like you as a professional, no job is ever going to be perfect. And then as long as you're okay with the contingencies from each job, you just pick whatever you think is you can tolerate with, you know? Like, I don't mind helping in practice. I don't mind helping a lot of the nutrition setup. I don't mind, you know, waiting for the players to come in. I'm like, if this is my job, like, I'm cool because I tolerate those aspects. And that's what we spend a lot of time doing, you know? Like, and staff meetings and all that, I think that the stuff is valuable. A lot of people complain and like, too many staff meetings or this and that. But, like, that's one time that you get your whole organization together and everybody can, like, in the same room, like, you know, be a team. So again, to answer the question, like, we spend a lot of time doing a lot of stuff outside the weight room because it's way more than just sets and reps. And if people think, like, a career in the NBA, and I'm speaking from a rookie standpoint, you know, this is my first year, like, you will do way more than just sets and reps. I promise you that. And if you're not okay with that, then maybe this is not the job for you. You know, I love being around. So it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, watch basketball? Are you kidding me? Like, come on.
Yeah, for
You
sure,
know?
for sure. And that's, you know, for younger strength coaches out there too, it's just like for them to understand how important that 2-hour window that you have with your athletes, how important that is, right? You have to bring the energy, you have to be organized, you have to be on point, because, you know, you worked for 8 hours, but there's 2 hours of what you really want to do with your athletes. You know, it's like, of course, different levels, college, and it's all different, right? But I told one strength coach asked me, he was like, hey, what is the most important thing to get into the NBA? I was like, well, coach when you have to coach. Coach when you have a chance. When you have a chance to coach, be there 1,000%, you know, because that hour, sometimes you do have, you know, an hour of a player. Sometimes you have 15 minutes, you know, like, what can you do in that hour to like make that player better, you know, because at this level, believe it or not, that's a 1% window for them to get better, right?
How expecting you to be on point.
For sure. You know, and if it's like you get caught up on like just doing all those things, and then when you really have to do your job with the strength conditioning, you were tired or you were caught up on something else, it's tough, you know what I mean? So it's like really enjoy the window that you have with each player, with each session that you have with your players, you know. So that's one thing that I told a young strength coach, and I thought was important for everybody to kind of, you know, hear the importance of coaching when you can coach, you know. So, but I mean, and another thing is people don't understand. People think that we travel, we lay down VIP, like we do charter a plane, but the traveling experience for you, you know, how is it?
That one, it's like there will be times that it's really uncomfortable, right? Just because it's long, it's late, your sleep schedule gets all out of whack. You know, there's days that we fly after a game, and then there's a time change, so you lose time. You get into a city at like 4 or 5 in the morning. It's winter, it's snowing, we gotta move bags. So it's like, but it's funny, again, like it's my first year, so I'm still on the, that's kind of cool. Like I don't like, let's just get it done, you know, like it's all good. But within that sort of chaos, it's still as comfortable as it could get.
For sure.
You know, like the hotels are nice, and then, you know, like the plane is tons of space, you know, so good food everywhere. So it's like, yeah, it's a grind, but they make that grind as comfortable as it possibly can be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of times that my sleep schedule was all out of whack, and I might have gotten grumpy, you know, with myself or about something or whatever, because I wasn't sleeping much. But that's just, again, right? Like this is year one. I'm already thinking in my head how I'm gonna, you know, like learn for the years to come, and like what can I do and tweak here and there to like make my own living more optimal.
For sure.
Especially, I consider us performance coaches, strength coaches, whatever, but sleep is huge for our players, and we preach that on them. But then our schedule is completely crazy at times, and then we demanding them to sleep in a cave and, you know, have all these like optimize your sleep, and you got to do all these things, but the travel doesn't help with that, right? So I'm like, but then again, like I'm acquiring information, and hopefully at some point we can find a way to make things better, you know? And I think that's our job as a coach. You know, not everything sucks. If that's the mentality, then you're gonna have that mentality with everything else you face in life. But it's like, okay, the situation might not be the best, but we can find the small wins here.
For sure. And as your first year, you know, you spoke about chaos, right?
Yeah.
How important it is to learn this job
I know where you're going
on
with
the
this.
chaos, you know, because I mean, I think the best thing, and I knew that coming in, when we wanted to bring you in, it was for a reason, right? Like, of course, your education, of course, everything that you did, your experience, but at the same time, I had a bond with you A lot of people think it's because we are both from Brazil.
Yeah, which is not true.
Which is not true, but that's what I'm saying. Like I had a bond with you, first of all, like I said, I need somebody reliable. I think that's the main thing. And I felt like you would be the guy reliable. And, and you still, you haven't proved me wrong. You're there, we together, like, you know what I'm saying? So, but I think that's like what showed me, like, yeah, he's legit. It was last year, Summer League. You know what I mean? I was like, hey man, listen, you came in late. Yeah. You're not even came to Denver for a Summer League. Yeah. Right? So you're
met everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you came in and you spent a couple of days there, and we were like, hey, okay, let's go sign your contract here, and then fly straight to Vegas and help me out. I'll take you through some stuff, but after 3 or 4 days, I have to go away, and it's your show. And I stayed there for 4 days, and you stay in Vegas usually for 15 days at least. So there's like 11 days by yourself. You didn't know anyone, like from the players and things like that. Staff. You knew some staff that you met, during the process. But how was it? Like, goes back to my question. How important was you learn what you learned then that helps you now? Like,
Again, right, I'm going to reference the past, and it's like every situation in my career kind of prepares you for that moment, So it's kind of like, I also like to think like you would not put me in a situation that would really fail me, right? Like if you gotta go, like I was hired for a reason. So it's like, I got your back, and it's like, I'm gonna do the best I can with the ability that I have. Always, right? Like, and that's why, like, a lot of times I see people getting in conflict and like, oh, that coach should have done that, should have done this. I'm like, I don't think he's an idiot, and I don't think he's doing that on purpose. I honestly think like that was, in his mind, his best solution for the problem he had in front of him. And that's kind of how I like to look at things, and that's how I faced that day, I'm not gonna lie though, you said like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go, and I'm like, it's kind of like, don't leave me. But at the same time, I'm like, well, sink or swim, like it's a great opportunity to prove your worth, and I don't think anybody is irreplaceable. So it's kind of like, I got it, let's do it, let's ride.
Yeah. Because in my mind, and that's when goes back to when you came in, I don't know if you remember the card that I wrote. It was like, welcome, I don't remember the whole message, but one of the things in the card was, please make mistakes. And I mean that, because I know I was the assistant for 6 years. I know that it took me 3 years to like
get in the groove,
50% what I had to do, and a lot of things change, players change, a lot of coaching and all those things. So like I wouldn't put you in a situation that would make you feel like you said, but I did hire you for a reason. That's why I had kind of the confidence to be like, hey, it's your time, but I also think that people need to make mistakes for them to learn.
For sure.
Bad or good mistakes. Like I see both sides. People could argue that there's no good mistakes, but it's like make mistakes. You will learn from mistakes. So yeah, but I think we almost up here, but I'm glad that you're on board.
Appreciate it, man.
What is there anything else that you would tell people? I don't know, for where you are now, it's open mic pretty much.
Yeah. It sounds cheesy, but it's just like if you rewind what we just talked about, you can find common grains there, between like, like treat everybody equally, like treat people as people first. Like learn your craft, but learn how to deal with people. Be loyal, be respectful, that's really the message. It's like, and it's funny because I feel personally that can go on any really thing in life, like, like relationships, other jobs, like different field. Like if this is not strength and conditioning, is not your gig, like you use some of the things we talked about and they will work on any sort of setting or scenario. So the message really is just, I don't know, like be a good person, and try your best. And to the mistake stuff that you mentioned earlier, it's like, yeah, make mistakes, but then if you're not learning from them, then they're gonna keep happening. And if they keep happening, now it's a problem, right? So it's just really introspectively trying to look when you do make a mistake as a young coach and be like, what have I learned from this situation? So I make sure if that happens again, like what can I do differently? And learn from it. So.
That's cool. Well, thank you. Appreciate you,
awesome.
And we will continue.
I know, right? Easy chats.
For sure.